It's the most common question we get in the comments of our videos. How do I stay calm with my child? It's a challenging thing, right, Vic?
It really is.
Staying calm. Do you remember before we were parents how patient
we
we
thought
were?
we were going to be so patient, right?
Oh, we were the most calm, patient people on the planet. And then we had kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, first of all, just an acknowledgement. This is normal. You're probably not as weird as you feel sometimes or as crazy as you're made out to be in your own mind. This is common.
Right.
Now, it's important to understand how your own brain works because you've got built into you a fight or flight response. This is something that we all have.
It's innate in every single person. And so coming to understand that about yourself and about your child is going to help you choose your reaction.
So just a real quick psychological summary of this. Your brain is divided up in terms of responsibility and tasks. Do you know which part of your brain controls eyesight? You know this, Vicki.
Yeah, very back.
It's the back, the occipital lobe. Now, you wouldn't guess that necessarily because it's the farthest away from your eyes. There's another little part right up on top. It's about the size of your thumb called the motor cortex. Guess what this one does? Moves you around.
Right.
Yeah, muscles, arms, legs. Movement, motor activity. This part right behind your forehead, thinking, cognition, rational thought, and also some aspects of personality, higher cognitive functioning like forgiveness and empathy. Okay, those could be important later on.
Right.
There's another part down by the brain stem. It's a collection of structures in your brain called the limbic system. And one of the jobs of your limbic system is simply to keep you alive.
Right. It does the breathing and it does kind of your reflexes and the just basic functions that you need in order to stay alive.
Alive, including keeping you safe in the face of a threat.
Mm-hmm.
The way that it does this is by injecting chemicals. Can I emphasize that these are chemicals?
Right.
Chemicals into your bloodstream that prepare your body to do one of two things: fight or run away. The fight or flight response.
Mm-hmm. That's what you've heard of it before.
You've got this built into your brain. Your kids have this built into theirs. So understanding that is really important when we want to keep our calm. Why are we not calm?
We've all of a sudden, somehow that system has been triggered by
Yes.
something your child does. And you suddenly have this injection of chemicals and you feel like usually fighting.
A part of your brain feels threatened. Now, I'm not talking about the logical thinking part of your brain, because you know that this 3-year-old is not a physical threat to you. But that limbic system doesn't know the difference between a real threat and a perceived threat. So it kicks these chemicals into your body, into your bloodstream. It causes you to have a bit of a power up. Do you remember on the kids' video games, sometimes they'd gobble up the star or whatever and then they're all powered up
and go for further.
Yeah, so that they can do more with less. Your body does the same thing. This fight or flight response is the one that we have to address if you want to stay calm.
So it almost sounds like, well, can I stay calm once that's addressed? Talk to me about how do we stay calm?
Yes, but here's the thing about chemicals. Chemicals have a half-life. Basically, that means how long it takes for half of that chemical to be metabolized or flushed out of your system or lose its potency.
Okay.
And so once those chemicals are triggered, you're going to feel it for a little while. Now, it's not a long half-life that these chemicals have.
It's pretty quick, yeah.
It's going to pass fairly quickly. Unlike caffeine, for example, has a half-life of 5 to 6 hours.
Right.
But most of the chemicals that we have in our fight or flight response, 30 minutes max. But a lot of them are even quicker acting than that. So you'll notice, for example, if somebody cuts you off on the freeway or you have a near hit.
Your heart just beats.
Some
for
people
the
call
next,
them near
like,
misses.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be a hit? Anyway, but so your heart gets fired up, right? And you feel that fight or flight response. And then 2-3 miles down the road, you're still feeling kind of...
But you calmed down a bit.
Still coming down from it. You still feel the chemicals in your system. So understand that it takes a little while to flush it out. But what we want to do is stop the infusion of those chemicals. The quickest way I know to do this is to practice calming yourself through breathing. Slow, focused breathing. I usually recommend in through the nose, stretch your lungs a little bit, hold, and then out through the mouth, nice and slow. Restrict the flow, slow it down, and do that 2 or 3 times. Now, what this does is it reverses that chemical process in your brain.
But you know what it also does when you're talking about with your child is it gives you time to formulate
Buys you time.
your reaction and maybe take some of the urgency. You know, kids are so good at pushing our buttons to get us to react right away.
Right.
And so it kind of takes some of that, gives you a little bit of extra time for both you and the child. So let's talk about some other things. What else can we do besides just the chemical part for our calmness?
And thank you for that distinction, because this is the brain we're talking about.
Right.
It's an organ in your body, has very little to do with your mind. Now, your mind is the part that's thinking. Your mind is the part that's making choices and decisions. Your mind is you, okay? So let's talk about the psychological part for a sec. Psychologically speaking, we get these thought patterns going. We're not always aware of them, but you can become aware of them. Hopefully watching this video makes you more aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
Our fight or flight response is based on our interpretation of something that's happening in our world. And usually it sounds something like this. This is not the way it should be.
Right.
Right? Well, is it or isn't it? Vicki, what do you know about child development?
So that's probably the biggest thing is learn what you can about child development. What are we expecting? What kind of behaviors do we expect at different stages of development for a child? So is it expected that a 2-year-old might be mad and throw themselves on the ground?
I had someone call me about that this week.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and maybe it was one of you. Thank you for calling. But the thing is, this was the first child of this young father. He had no idea that this is exactly how 2-year-olds behave.
Right. You know, really, you got to remember that the way the child's acting is just an event. And then it's your thought process that you go through that determines whether you get upset or not. So if you see that and you think, you're not supposed to be like that, you should have done it a different way, that's going to cause you frustration and irritation, which will show up in you reacting in a very uncalm way. But if you look at this event, you go, he's being 2. I guess that's part of his development to be like this right now. You suddenly can kind of change the way that you're going to react because you've changed your thought about the event. And so just kind of take a little time, make sure you understand child development. And if you don't, there are so many ways. Ask a professional, go out there and Google it, but try to become aware of the development. And then get really good at accepting instead of expecting.
Ooh, love that distinction. Accepting rather than expecting. Yeah. And then you can start to expect what you've come to accept.
Right. Now that doesn't mean you're going to accept horrible behavior and not do anything about it, but you accept what's happening in the moment so that you don't get upset. And then
good point, Vicki. It doesn't mean that we're not going to do anything about it or try to improve that behavior. Of course, part of our role as parents is to teach our kids how to show up better in their world.
Right.
So yeah, of course we're going to do that.
But we were talking about how do I stay calm? And as long as I'm expecting something that doesn't happen, I start to feel frustrated. So accept where it's at, stay calm, and then we'll move forward into another concept.
I remember when I used to work on a secured psychiatric unit in a hospital. And we were trained in our trainings to expect certain crazy behavior. And sure enough, I'm over there working the graveyard shift one night, and this guy comes in screaming and yelling and profaning, and he's aggressive and combative. We had to restrain him. And the whole time I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's what they brought up in our training.
Yeah.
And I wasn't upset at him. I was able to stay calm. It's just my job. So if we can take our parenting job like that a little bit more and accept rather than expect, that's beautiful. As we wrap this up, let's keep a perspective of who these little kids are to start with. They're not mini me, right? It's not a little copy of you walking around. Otherwise they'd behave better, right?
Maybe.
But it's also not, the kids are not your possessions. Kids are not a reflection of who you are as a parent. They're little people. And why are they your kids? Well, because you showed up on Earth before they did. What if it were just the opposite and your kids showed up first and they're your parents? Well, somebody was your parents, and why were they your parents? Well, because they showed up before you. So here we are. We're all in a string of people who doesn't know what they're doing.
That's comforting.
But there's some truth to
Yeah,
that too, right? We keep the perspective that you're here for a reason, and there's a reason why you're the parent. Your job is to love them no matter what, and even if. It's not to make sure that they don't do the typical things that kids are going to do. Focus in on that job. Remind yourself of it. Remember who you are. You're a benevolent, generous, loving parent. And sure, you get frustrated, and usually that's because your expectations have been violated. When you remember who you are and who they are, everything fits perfectly into place, and you have a much better experience as a parent. Hey, you're in good company. All of us as parents struggle with this or that from time to time. That's why we've created a positive parenting community. We've got coaching groups. We've got discovery calls that you can register for right down there in the description. If you would like to have us be a more intimate part of your parenting team, register for one of those calls today.
To the phone, and I wished I